So, and in case you missed it, my name is David Maynard, and I'm happy to welcome you to the weekly Dharma gathering. Our tonight's session will be led by Devin Berry, and that is entitled, hang on, let's see, oh, too many windows here, I'm sorry. Ah, a practical exploration of the simplicity and beauty of everyday Dhamma. So um, Devin will lead us through a guided meditation, a Dharma talk, and we will close with a question and answer period. So a brief intro to Devin. Devin is deeply committed to the personal and collective liberation of marginalized communities, knowing that through the integration of reflection and insight, clarity and wisdom give rise to wise action. Devin is a community leader with East Bay Meditation Center in Oakland, where he co-founded the Teen Sangha and the Men of Color Sangha. He was a core leader, with the San Francisco People of Color Sangha and is a founding teacher of Deep Time Liberation. DTL explores the intersection of Dharma, ancestral legacy, and collective healing as it specifically relates to the African diaspora. Devin is currently in the 2017 through 2021 Insight Meditation Society Teacher Training Program and has over 20 years of meditation experience. So with that, I would like to go ahead and turn things over to Devin. So please lead us.
Thank you, David. And thank you all for coming out, to sit together and hear reflections. And thanks to others who will see this recorded. So why don't we go ahead and sit? So just allowing ourselves first to be as comfortable as we can, if that's possible. It doesn't matter whether we are possibly lying down, sitting upright in a chair, sitting on a cushion, just allowing ourselves to be comfortable, alert, yet relaxed. And whether your eyes are closed, either is fine. And I want to keep the meditation actually quite simple. And first have you bring your attention to your feet, or to the root, to the bottom half of your body. So just directing your attention to your feet. It doesn't matter if it's the left foot or right foot or both. Just allowing your attention to rest there for a moment. And noticing maybe any warmth or coolness, dryness, any sensations, any activity happening there in the feet. And now directing that same attention, moving it into the hands, just moving it from the feet to the hands, allowing the attention to rest at the hands, maybe the flowing energies, the pumping, blood pumping, any of the sensations, tingling, numbness, anything happening in the hands, dryness, moisture, sweat. Just resting there for a moment. You may notice that pumping and throbbing. And now bring your attention to one of the three anchors, whether that's the warm or cool air at the nostrils, just above the lip. Or maybe that's the rise and fall at the chest. Or maybe it's the in and out at the belly. Just resting your attention at one of the anchors. Now maybe taking a little deeper breath if possible. Exhaling. Maybe raising and lowering the shoulders. Settling the body into whatever position you're in. Now getting a sense of your bottom on the cushion, bottom on the seat. Maybe a sense of the entire body. Maybe there's a broader awareness of your feet on the floor, your foot in the sock, bottom on the seat, your back on a cushion. Just allowing the attention to get a sense of the entire body. Maybe that's the whole body breathing. Just sitting and knowing that you're sitting. And breathing in, knowing that you're breathing in. And breathing out, knowing that you're breathing out. Just allowing that simple contact to be the foundation for the sitting right now. Of course, the mind will wander. You come back to one of those contact points, one of the anchors. We'll come back to the body breathing. Sitting and knowing that you're sitting. Just allowing mind and body to rest upon the earth. maybe the mind has wandered off, it's more important to come back with kindness, gentleness than anything. Just allowing the attention to rest either with sensations in the body, maybe in the hands or feet, one of the anchors, warm or cool air at the nostrils, rise and fall at the chest, air coming and going from the belly. Maybe you're noticing sound in the background, just allowing that to be your object of meditation. Or the body breathing, the body sitting on the earth, resting, knowing the contact of the bottom and the cushion, back, the chair back, laying down, pillow underneath the head. Resting our attention. May all beings know happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings know joy and the causes of joy. May all beings know the root of suffering and the end of suffering. May all beings awaken and be free. May the merits of this practice benefit all beings and bring peace. Thank you all. So the reflections that I was going to offer today were on the simplicity of practice. And I chose that, or this came about actually from my very first online teaching experience. This is my third. So still getting used to, right, the digital format. So during my first online teaching outing, I had just come out of a month of practice, a little over a month of practice, specifically doing loving kindness or metta practice, as well as concentration practices. And that was pre-COVID. And then I come out and actually hadn't known much of what was going on to the extent of the pandemic in the country. So I was signed up to give a talk somewhere, and a couple days before then I had read an article about Zoom bombing, and I thought, that's an interesting thing. I was thinking of it as an interesting tactic or activist tactic to use with corporations, and thought, wow, on one hand, probably serves them right, was probably something that floated through my head. And on another hand, I was thinking, wow, this is another tool to, cause somebody some harm or disruption. So I began to give my guided meditation, and immediately noticed that something wasn't quite right. And all sorts of things started happening in the chat box, chat activity, and people being renamed, and pretty horrible things being said, that sort of in between, the crude humor of a 12-year-old boy kind of thing. And I was actually quite shaken by all of it. I was able to make it through the guided meditation. Most of the folks, of course, had their eyes closed in this particular sangha. So they didn't actually see what was going on. I saw it because all the messages were coming to me directly via the chat box, and also showing up, being sent out to everyone. The host was brand new, hadn't worked Zoom before, so there were at least one or two or possibly three Zoom trolls roaming about, and offering up all sorts of racist banter, homophobic banter, your standard garden variety. I'm hiding, no one can see me, I'm gonna say everything I could say kind of thing. I kind of rolled with it, and because I was shaken, what I could do in that moment, it was really tough to actually give a guided meditation in the midst of what was being said and what was happening. So what I could do was I turned to a practice normally done in pairs called Vipassana out loud, where essentially you're giving your self meditation instruction, or you're saying out loud the meditative experience that you're having. You're actually offering that out loud, and it's what I had access to. It's the only thing I had access to. I could essentially give the guided meditation based on what was going on in my body and mind. So it was, some of the simple, coming back to some of the really simple basic things for me, the anapanasati, the full awareness of breathing, mindfulness of breathing, the simplicity of that, or just coming back to the body as my body was a little shaky and fried. It was, knowing that my feet were on the ground, or knowing that my hands were touching my desk. And then being able to scope back a little bit to knowing that I was looking at the computer. So I'm essentially offering these instructions to folks while this is going on. And noticing at the same time, right, my mind state. So there are the Zoom trolls that are trolling this whole event that's happening. And then there are the mind trolls that are trolling my mind with all the little other different things that are happening. So there's anger and rage coming up. There's confusion, there's sadness, there's disappointment, right? All of that happening. And it was quite, as I said, I was quite shaken by it because, of course, coming into the physical Dharma space, right? We are usually all coming together to hear the Dharma, to sit together, to practice together. So your expectation isn't that kind of disruption, but in the digital world, it's akin to the Wild Wild West. So that sort of thing can happen. I managed to make it through all of it and make it through my talk. I wasn't able to access most of what I was going to say. There were little bits and pieces. So I sort of named what was happening and sort of went from there. And all that to say is all of that event, that assault on one hand, really brought me back to the basics and the simplicity of the practice. I was loving some of the practices that I was doing. And I really realized that the beauty of the practice is my being able to remember and being able to come back to those basic fundamental practices that the Buddha first taught. And so since then, most of us are at home under some sort of a lockdown or quarantine, depending on where you are. I'm here in New England and spend most of the day inside. So rather than actually view what has happened over the last several weeks at this point as, because I've heard people say, right, I can make a retreat of this, or this is a pause in life. This isn't, I actually don't view it as a pause. You don't get to pause life. Life is happening here and now. It's still going on. This isn't a retreat. I didn't choose for this to happen. So then how do I, rather than view it that way, how do I turn up my practice, fit my life into my practice? And so I've done that view a few different ways, few different really simple ways. One is just sort of looking at and using a simple awareness practice, simple mindfulness practice, or sort of a broader awareness or broader mindfulness practice that makes it easy to have some consistency at home doing it. And that's as simple as, well, one, some of the meditation instruction I gave of actually being able to, because I'm sitting all day, on Zoom meetings or calls or at my computer, is occasionally that instruction, sit and know you're sitting, is one that's there. I use as an inquiry question. Is like, do I actually know that I'm sitting right now? Do I know that my feet are touching the ground right now? Setting a bell. I have a random bell on the computer that goes off hourly. And I noticed what I would do with the hourly is that right before the hour, I know the bell is going to come off. So I sort of straighten myself up and I'm in my posture. With a random bell, the bell rings. I stop whatever it is that I'm doing, pause for a moment. I'm able to come back to the breath, come back to the body, And doing that several times throughout the day has been incredibly helpful, as well as finding things that serve as markers or transition. So there are the doorknobs from getting from one room to the other in my place. And so as I reach for the doorknob, then there's the mental note of reaching, and there's the mental note of touching. And I'm noticing that that knob is cold, or if that knob is warm. So it's creating this broader sense of awareness and stringing together all of these moments of mindfulness throughout the day, whether that's drinking a cup of tea and, of course, knowing that this is a cup of tea, but then touching it and pausing for a moment at the warmth, of actually feeling the warmth. So those things have been quite helpful for me to bring my life into the practice and not separate either of them. And it's been a couple of other similar things like that. So actually with that sort of natural awareness, where it's a 50-50 awareness. So, right? So 50% of the attention is on the content, whatever it is. That's the touching the cup, or touching the doorknob, or hearing the sound of the bell. And 50% is on knowing, and knowing how you feel about it, or knowing how you are about it. So knowing that the bell has rung, and then knowing that there's a sense of relief, possibly, or knowing that there's a sense of that I was rushing or hectic, or knowing that there was a sense of a little anger and irritation at whatever email it was that I was looking at. So knowing all of those things. And as I begin to do that more and more and more, then I've actually brought that into the news cycle, which for me has been a source of jumping down the news rabbit hole, because I need to know, or believe I need to know, every single thing that's actually happening. I want to be informed, but I jump down the hole and I'm gone for quite a while. So, but if I'm using the 50-50 approach, then I can, 50% is on the content, the story, whatever the briefing or whatever it is that's happening. And then the other 50% is on how I'm feeling about this, knowing that I'm actually watching this, knowing that this is happening, knowing, possibly blood pressure rising, or or having a sense all of a sudden I find myself like I'm actually physically shaking my head, like, no, that's not true. So knowing all of these various things. And because I can know them, and I have the capacity to know them, and I begin to notice those things with the news, I'm watching a whole lot less news. I'm watching enough to actually be informed, but I'm not watching news all day, or I don't need to see every single story that comes my way. So that's all been helpful. So that's one exploration, sort of simple exploration that I've done. Another exploration for me, and it comes from centering actually ancestors in my practice, and it's something that I do otherwise in my practice. It's actually a great deal of my practice, and something that with the arising of COVID, that of course I'd forgotten, as sort of the nervous system has gotten a little bit turned up, and there's a low-grade agitation in the background, sense of confusion, sense of uncertainty, all of that happening. That one simple thing is actually just centering ancestors in my practice. And what I mean by that is, I have an ancestor altar and a candle that I use at times, and it could be that, and could be as explicit as thinking about them and invoking them, but oftentimes it's just a deeper sense of awareness of knowing that I have a lineage, that I come from somewhere. And I mean blood ancestors and diaspora ancestors and our larger ancestors as well. I mean each of those things, each of those layers. And at times actually just resting in, there are others that have been through similar, there have others that have survived, there are others that have persevered, there are others that have been resilient, have had a sense of resiliency, and all of that is within this body and within this mind. resting in that. So resting in the qualities of those beings. And it's very similar to, we call it in the Theravadan world, Buddha Santi, Buddham Santi, which is a practice of reflecting on the qualities of the Buddha. It's the same thing, holding the qualities of the Buddha in mind. It's quite a similar thing. And so I actually work with both of those practices where I'm reflecting on the qualities of the Buddha's teaching that we've been given over the course of 2,600 years, and I'm reflecting on the qualities of my ancestors or our ancestors. And both of those things just serve the purpose of brightening the mind. It's just there to brighten the mind a little bit, right? It begins to take the mind away from the orientation of the agitation that's there, potential of like unwholesome things. It just serves to brighten the mind, and I can rest in that brightness of those things. So that's been actually quite quite a beautiful practice to do, because within that reflecting on the ancestors, reflecting on the Buddha, then there's also mourning and grieving that's in there, and it's a mourning and grieving for much of what is happening and going on today, but which serves the purpose of actually being able to stop and to pause, to actually mourn and to actually grieve some of that a little bit, rather than just going on and on and on with my day, with the various things that I'm doing. So I'm holding that as well. So the joy and the sorrow of that, I'm not just giving it, I'm not resting in a place of mourning and grieving. I'm knowing mourning and grieving as well as knowing joy for the ancestors. So those two things have been sort of late have been the two things that are most prominent with me. And another has been actually just music, just simply listening to music and taking it sort of as a single task rather than the multitasking that I typically do in our day, that we typically do. And even sitting at home now can really be, I mean, it's all blurred out. You're not quite sure what day and time it is, and the work that I'm doing, it all blurs into one. So what I've done with sort of, and using it as a samadhi or using it as a gathering practice, is just taking several pieces of music that I enjoy listening to. Doesn't matter what it is, it's something that I have previously enjoyed, and using sort of the 50-50 concept of maybe listening to that piece of music once and totally listening to it just for the content, just for the feelings that it evokes, the brightness, the kindness, the playfulness, the love, the melancholy, whatever it is, allowing those things to arise and rest in those things and know them. See, feel, hear them arise, be there, and then diminish. And then I'm able to listen to the music another time where I am tracking, either I'm using a piece of the music as an object for meditation, as the object for concentration. So a piece of the music, typically, you know, a voice or horn, a drum or something like that, tracking that throughout the piece of music, and doing that over and over again with quite a few pieces of music allows for a good amount of samadhi to be built, or for the mind to gather quite a bit with something that's so familiar to us and something that's so ordinary as music. And doing that, because at times, if the nervous system is really turned up and lots of discursive thinking and thoughts, then being able to turn to the body, being able to turn to sound is something to do to prepare yourself for another type of meditation. And that's one that has been quite helpful to me. I've had the opportunity to work with a few frontline workers in the Metro New York area, and that's one that I have worked with them on and have suggested they use, and that they have found quite helpful to be able to soothe themselves, to be able to turn down the nervous system a little bit, that allows them to get back to zero so that they can begin to have a sense of the body or feel the body or feel sensations in the body, and then to be able to feel the breath. Well, you know, some of these other things need to happen, and the single task of listening to music, and listening to music while listening to music, not actually doing anything else. It's not flipping through a magazine, it's not looking at something on the computer, it's not talking to someone, it's literally sitting in a chair or laying on the sofa or laying in the bed or something, and just that activity and absorbing mind, body, and heart in that activity. So those are some of the few the simple things that I've done. I ran across a lovely book called the Joy of Delights, the Book of Delights, by a man named Ross Gay, and who spent an entire year essentially documenting everything that was delightful to him. And I've taken this on my outdoor walks rather than going outside and honing in on who is next to me in a mask and not in a mask, and how far apart we are and what's going on, and having, you know, the various stories be built and create there. While all of that is happening and I'm not ignoring it, I can't possibly ignore it, I'm in it, I'm a part of it. Spring is also happening, things are actually blooming, the animals, the birds and things, there's a whole world that's out there that we are part of too, but, you know, oftentimes see ourselves separate. And so I'm fortunate enough to live near nature preserves, so I'm actually able to get myself out into nature for a bit. And I just spend the time while I'm there, having the mind focus on things that are of wonder, things that are awe, colors that are there. So having the mind focus on that. And, noticing the other day a pond that I walk past almost every day is actually a mirror pond. So standing in front of the pond, it's really interesting, right? So I'm able to see the reflection of the mountains and the skies and everything behind me. And the feeling that that evokes is so incredibly wonderful and delightful, and is something that helps to brighten the mind again, to helps to clear the mind a little bit, to just be able to dial that nervous system down and to be present. And I can just stand there in front of that and know that I'm standing there, know that the breath is with me, know that the practice is with me. So being able to take a look at any and all of those things. And I've been enjoying the heck out of all of it for the last couple of weeks, to really immerse myself in that while in the midst of this uncertainty, while we await whatever it is that's coming next, or however life is going to unfold. The practice goes on, and there's not a single opportunity to be missed with the practice at all, particularly at home, right? Our habits, trust me, our habits, right, are on full display at home, right? This is not as if you're going to a center to practice to be able to get away. So there is a realization of that, but that's also why sort of looking at the broader mindfulness, or looking at a broader awareness at home, being able to bring attention to some of the everyday things that we are doing. Cleaning, you know, when I have cleaning day here now at the house, whether it's laundry, sweeping, vacuuming, any of those things, that's the meditation practice for the day. And it is as equal and as important and as valuable as my sitting practice at this point. I can bring that same intentionality to it. So I'm curious for other folks. What, we're home, like what? How have you brought your life into your practice into your life? How is that for you, for folks? I'm curious how that is, if anybody cares to say.
So if you would like to share, feel free to unmute yourself to ask a question or break a comment and explore what's helping with you. Or if you prefer to type it in the chat, that is also fine.
And no pressure. You don't have to do this, but I'm genuinely curious.
Well,
Hi, Devin.
oh, good.
Oh,
Go ahead,
hey,
Sheena.
Oh, I was just gonna say, before all of this happened, I was already part of an online meditation community. So I've been like really just diving into that. And this community offers meditation 4 times a day, like throughout the week. So I just try to log on in the morning and just like, it's a way to connect with other people. And then obviously like coming to the weekly Dharma gathering has really helped a lot as well. Just staying connected with people and staying grounded in my practice. And there are so many teachers right now offering online programs that I wouldn't have had access to before because they were doing them like locally. So I've been enjoying a lot of those. Like Lama Rod has done like a couple of retreats online. So that stuff has been really helpful for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Sheena. Right, I think I got Sheena.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so. It's really interesting. One of the silver linings of, I mean, if there's a silver lining of being at home this much or spending the amount of time we do or not being able to go, is that the Dharma world across the various traditions, the offerings are there. I mean, this is a time to practice. We have all the teachers are out there. People have asked me, oh, I don't, are you teaching here? Are you teaching there? I'm along with everyone else. I'm able to sit with some of my colleagues and some of my favorite teachers and some of my mentors and folks that otherwise I wouldn't be able to travel financially across country, across the world to be able to see, or the prices for a retreat, I wouldn't be able to do it. So this is actually quite a beautiful thing to connect in that way. And I don't even know that you can do too much of that. It's like, right, you go and check someone out, you sit with them, listen for a little bit, and then there's someone else the next day. Thank you.
I wanted to take an opportunity to thank you for the description of your practice with music, and I hadn't considered quite that way of sitting with it just to experience it and then to really make it part of the practice. It's in terms of the really making it become the practice. It just I definitely want to try that.
Yeah, it's one. It is. I mean, right now, one of my most favorite practices, and part of that came about for me a while back. I mean, I've done it in the past, but to the extent that I'm doing it now, and with the intensity I'm doing it now, that I hadn't experienced before. But I was working with someone who has been facing some pretty traumatic things. And I actually suggested that she not sit. It just was sort of what was going on, the physical pain in her body, the pretty severe dissociative thoughts, things like that. I thought maybe that wasn't the best thing for her. And so I turned her on to Aretha Franklin. God, I'm forgetting this documentary that just came out, Amazing Grace documentary. So it's like this full concert that happens on Sunday at a church in LA. And so from beginning to end, that's her meditation. That's it. She's absorbed in that from beginning to end. And it's pretty incredible that, she's probably heard it now. She would say like 500 times, and there's something that she gets different out of it every single time. And there's sometimes she's listening to it just for the sheer beauty of the music and Aretha's voice. And that becomes a wonderful thing itself, because it evokes all of these feelings and sensations come up. And so, they come up, and sometimes she's just with them and swept away, but she knows she's with them and swept away. So there's a sense of mindfulness that's there. Other times it's 50-50, and she's hearing it. She knows bits and pieces that are there. It's actually quite a beautiful practice. Typically for me, I've done it with jazz music, jazz of a very particular era for me, and following Coltrane's horn. You know, it can be a full-on concentration practice within there if I wanted it to be that. You know, and don't, you know, I'm not mistaken in trying to pass off that somehow like the Buddha taught this. I'm not saying that. So I want to be crystal clear about that.
I'm just getting back into practice after about 30 years. So that's how this time has been leading me through various coincidences to the Dharma gathering.
Mm.
So, yeah.
And that so your time back after 30 years, what's been what part of the practice have you gravitated towards? What's been helpful for you?
I guess the calming of the mind a bit has helped a lot over the years, and the little bit that I have been doing over the last 30 years is always I feel more focused in the moment of sitting, and I don't know how much that carries over into the rest of my life yet, but it's a start.
Yeah, definitely a start. I mean, you know, the mindfulness muscle, essentially, right? The more we're doing it, then the more it'll be able to carry over. And sometimes, and I even actually think sometimes it carries over and we don't necessarily notice it, but other people that know us, they sense it, which
Yeah.
is the marker as well. Beautiful. Thank you both. Well, it's been lovely to sit with you all, and appreciate it. Would love to, yeah, thanks to Shantae. And yeah, love to do it again.
All right, well, let's see. I will take my opportunity to thank everyone for joining us today and for watching it on the recording, which I expect will be a much larger community than we have in person, but this has been a wonderful group to have a discussion with. And again, thank you, Devin, for the opportunity for a nice, good period of practice and many helpful tips on how we can continue practicing in our everyday life. So, so I would, let's see. Again, of course, I do want to welcome you back for next week. And next week, our teacher will be, excuse me, Dr. Shantae Paradigm Smalls. And they will be talking about, the short version is Decolonizing Dharma, the Paths of Liberation. And a more lengthy description is what is liberation and what is any of us willing to do to experience it? How do we cultivate mind, body, and emotions to be oriented toward liberation, no matter what form it takes? So I have not had a chance to look up the URL to paste that in for next week's talk, but please visit the weekly Dharma Gathering website and look for that if you are not already a subscriber. And I encourage you, if not, to become a subscriber. So there are 7-day free trials available, and it's wonderful being able to just register and pop in for any of the talks, and then to go back and reference the ones and remember what you found helpful. So, so again, thank you, Devin. And would you like to close the session for us?
Sure. Thank you very much, David. Appreciate it. I'll just close sharing the merit. Actually, I'll share it with reading a couple of things here. Knowing how to be solitary is central to the art of loving. When we can be alone, we can be with others without using them as a means of escape. And that's bell hooks. And then there's my favorite. Caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare. It's Audre Lorde. It's a little bit. So again, may the merits of this practice benefit all beings and bring peace. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening or good day, whatever time it is.